All right, let's take a look now at a video. And this video is basically a video about um, a compliance technique, pain compliance technique that is being used by the German police in order to remove eco-protesters. Now, this was sent to me by one of the brothers who wanted me to evaluate the effectiveness of this technique and also whether this is something which is good to use in situations like this where the police need to do these kind of removals of non-compliant subjects. So, first of all, let's take a look at the technique itself, understand the technique itself, okay? We see here that the one police officer is holding one hand, and this one is not, there's no technique being applied to the wrist that I can see on the left side, but the police officer on the right side is holding the subject, non-compliant subject, and then the wrist lock is being applied here. So let's take a look at this. Oh yeah, we can see, yeah. So the left side is not being controlled and the right side is basically in right, so this is and these are eco protesters that don't want to, that are like blocking the road or something like that, and they don't want to leave. Okay, now, first of all, what is the actual technique itself? So the technique itself, the base of the elbow is planted against the subject's elbow, the non-compliant subject. The base of the elbow is planted on the body of the police officer, okay? And then you have the wrist, which is basically forced down into this angle, and pressure is applied towards the base of the police officer's base over here on the side where the police officer's body would be. So the base of the elbow. So the base of this is applied pressure towards the base of the elbow, right? So that's what it is. So you're basically doing this, and you're hyperflexing the wrist like that in order to create the pain. So that is the structural technique, the way that it's put together. Now, is it effective? Yes, to a certain degree, but it's effective against non-compliant subjects who are also non-lethal, okay, and not under the not under the influence of any kind of drugs or alcohol, which could affect that their pain level and their feeling towards pain. So usually these kind of techniques are used towards these kind of individuals, are targeted for these kind. Now the technique itself is not deadly, okay? You're basically just forcing the wrist to go into another direction, which it shouldn't really go, okay? Pushing it a little bit further than it should go. It hurts, yes, no doubt. Have I done it? 10,000 times. Have I received it on myself? 10,000 times over the past 30-something years of training. Yeah, okay. Is it a deadly technique? No. Is it always functional? No. Is it something which the police should use in this kind of situation? Yes. And the reason for that is because most of these eco type of protesters and these political type of protesters, they're usually non-violent. So they're just kind of like block the road. They sit there, they piss in one place, they shit in one place, they don't want to go anywhere. And that they kind of they're fighting for their specific cause in that way. So non-compliance with the law or non-compliance with what the government wants them to do. Now, forget about the political implications of this, whether you agree or disagree. Anything for the environment, I agree. I agree with blocking the road too, because I think that anything that brings attention to the global climate issue is important. But I know it's annoying, this whole kind of thing, and the police have to do their job. But anyways, the political stuff aside, should the police use this? Yes, I personally think that they should, because this is the type of person that you need to use it with. These people are not going to hurt the police officer. Most probably 99.9% of the time, they do not hurt the police officer. They do not hurt bystanders. They're just annoying because they're blocking a road and people need to pass or something, or they're blocking an office building or something like that, right? So this kind of technique is good for these type of people, non-compliant subjects. Other situations where this kind of technique would be used would maybe be patients who are non-compliant and they attack the nurse or they attack the doctor, the paramedic, and then we have to strap them into the stretcher, okay? So you can use a pain compliance technique like that in order to force compliance, get them into the stretcher, and then tie them with the straps that are available on the stretcher. If things are really insane, then you could do a chemical takedown in order to knock them out, okay? And that but that depends on the scope of your practice as a medic, or if you're whatever healthcare practitioner you are. They're in the hospital, probably they will do that. They'll use straps and they'll use some kind of chemical takedown. And the ambulance, again, depends on your scope of practice and the laws in your area. So this kind of technique is applicable in those kind of situations. Another situation would be, for example, in a school environment where a teacher maybe has a student who becomes violent or aggressive, and then you can use this kind of techniques in order to gain compliance. Most high school level students, where there are some kind of altercations with the teacher, those students are not hardcore fighters. They're kids, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids who are just brought up poorly, who are involved in stupidity. And those type of children, this type of pain compliance works well on those type of kids because they usually have never felt something like this before. And it is a very sharp, it's kind of a violent pain that shoots through your entire arm. You feel like your arm is going to be broken. So if this is the first time that something like this is applied to you, it's kind of, it's terrifying, it's quite terrifying. So for people who are working at school, this might be an option for them as well, or for police officers who are trying to do this. So this technique is fine. Now, where you would not want to use a technique like this is with people who are under the influence of some kind of drug. So people who take, for example, methamphetamines or cocaine, it will inhibit their ability to feel this pain. So there will be this non-compliance type of pain techniques will be reduced in efficacy when you apply to that type of a subject. And also, any type of person who is going to be extremely violent in receiving that pain and then attacking you afterwards, it's more of a threat for you to apply that technique than it would be to simply just, choke them out or knock them out if you wanted to, if you were in a fight with these people. So depending on the situation, again, I would think maybe, these kind of things are taught to police officers, and it depends again on the police officer's skill level. Okay, now if I apply this technique, I've done this 10,000 times over the past 30 years, and even more than that, maybe, these kind of techniques. But for somebody who's doing like a police certification program for 2 or 3 days, and they don't really have a lot of experience outside of that training environment for 2 or 3 days a year for their certification that the agency chops and go ahead, get on the street, they might apply it in a wrong way. And it might not be as effective as somebody who does it on a regular basis, like myself, or for other instructors who are training this a lot. So that's also an issue. Also, who applies the technique is as important as the technique itself. Okay, the same thing with the system. Who applies the technique is as important as the system. Who applies the system is as important as the system itself. So these are all factors to consider when you're looking at this kind of scenario and when you're looking at these kind of techniques. Like I said, anything with methamphetamines or cocaine or something like that, it numbs the effects of these kind of things, and it wouldn't be as applicable anymore. It would be more of a risk to you to do that in that kind of situation. Another risk to you if you're using these kind of techniques is in situations where the person is maybe a more hardcore individual, maybe somebody who's a street fighter who has already a lot of exposure to fighting and pain, who's come out of prison, somebody who's very tough, these type of very tough individuals who are on the street. Using this kind of pain compliance technique on them maybe doesn't work as well, because pain is something that you get used to the more that you are exposed to it. So physical pain is something that the more exposure you have, the more you get used to it, the more you can handle it. People increase their pain thresholds with the training that they do. So somebody who walks onto the training environment the first day and gets this applied to them is different than somebody who's gotten applied to them 10,000 times, okay? It's completely different. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. If somebody does this on me, it hurts. But I will be able to fight through that pain better than the person who got it the first time and has never felt that pain before. And if Conor McGregor walks in and does this technique on you, it's going to hurt regardless of who you are, okay? So that's just reality. So who it is very important that is applying this technique on you, the skill level that an individual has. And also the subject is important, on who that subject is, what their pain threshold is, what their background is, their exposure to pain, and their ability to fight through that pain. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration when you use these kind of techniques. So for me, I make it very simple because there are a lot of details. So I make it very simple. If I think that this person has got any kind of uh, if I get the feeling that this person is not going to be receptive to this kind of technique because of their background or what I'm seeing in the situation about this individual, I will not bother to apply it. I'd rather just, elbow and knock the person out. Okay, so I'm like that. I don't care, and I'm more interested in my own safety and my own victory than I am in helping somebody else survive the encounter in a better shape. I want me to survive the encounter in a better shape, and you should always think like that. Your focus should be taking care of yourself first before you are worrying about taking care of somebody else. And the police officers are doing the same thing. They're thinking about themselves first. If this person becomes very aggressive and non-compliant, they will not use this technique anymore. They'll use a much more aggressive technique in order to deal with that person. Maybe throwing them down on multiple officers, knee on the neck, this kind of thing, okay? So it will be a lot more aggressive situation. So keep that in mind for these kind of pain compliance techniques. They're effective to a certain degree, but it depends on the subject and it depends on the person who's applying it. Okay, so that's what I got for you for this week. Hope it's useful.